I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. A counter-revolutionary leader in a revolutionary age. Michael Ledeen joins. His criticism at Forbes.com, Michael's at the Foundation of Democracies, applies directly to the remarks made by leaders of the great powers these last days and hours at the United Nations. I'm looking particularly at the great power of the United States, the great power of Russia, and the European great powers in between, France and Great Britain and Germany, all looking to the future. But if it is a revolutionary age, and I accept that from Mr. Ledeen, what about this counter-revolutionary leader, a man who is committed to cleaning up the colonial excesses of the 20th century, though it is the 21st? Michael, a very good evening to you. Does your measure of the United States foreign policy at this point include the possibility that the United States is going to work with Russia? I want to check that box immediately, because what I heard from Vladimir Putin at the United Nations is that Russia is willing to work with anybody to achieve its goals. Good evening to you.
Good evening, John. Nice to be with you as always. And the answer is yes. Putin's willing to work with anybody who climbs aboard. And yes, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Obama join this coalition. The fundamental passion driving Obama's Middle East policies, actions, is the desire for a strategic alliance with Iran. And Iran is co-chairman of the big military alliance that is now building up in Syria. That includes the Russians, the Iraqis, the Chinese. That's big news. Not just Chinese ships, including aircraft carriers and missile boats, but Chinese fighters. So we're going to see Chinese on the ground, apparently, in the Middle East, fighting against whoever it is the Russians are really there to fight against. So if the Iranians say my guess is that it all depends on what Tehran says to Obama, because he still wants this deal, and no one has yet signed the deal. So he's still on the hook.
You make the larger point that the war is underway and that it has been going on for some time, and we're losing the war, at least to the terms that Mr. Obama has laid out. Is that a concern to the other players? I want to stay with the great powers because they're all showing up right now. I have this sense, Michael, that it's an open question whether they want the United States to participate, at least the United States represented by Mr. Obama.
Well, I think we frighten them now. I think Obama frightens them. He's so weak, and there is no appeasement of which he is incapable. There is no retreat that he will not order. And even in places where we have troops now, things are going badly in Afghanistan. We just lost a major city to the Taliban, and there were thousands of American troops there. So that's bad news also.
The economic order, that's another way of talking about American power. Will it stand up after our retreat, military retreat in the Middle East? Are we still in economic power? That is one possible balm that you can point to after all of these disappointments.
Yes, the American economic system is amazing. It's amazing that our numbers are not worse than they are. On the other hand, I put a lot of stock in meaningful anecdotes, and when I see General Electric headed for Canada, that speaks to me. That worries me. Look, I'm very frightened, and I think that the allies, or former allies, are also very frightened because they're not ready really to fight a serious war. They see that our enemies have put together this amazing global coalition which is fighting a war, and the United States, which has most of the military power on our side of the world, isn't going to fight. They're not willing to fight. So what are French, Italians, Spanish, Brits, Belgians, etc., what are they supposed to do? And the answer is they take out insurance, as anybody does when the mafia comes to shake you down and says what a pity it would be if you suddenly started having trouble and the Americans didn't show up. We can help you with that. So they are. And so the Israelis go to Moscow, and the Egyptians go to Moscow, and the French go to Moscow. They're all going to Moscow.
Mr. Obama looks to removing Bashar al-Assad from Damascus. Is that realistic at this point, Michael, or is he just on an old outline and they've got to update that at the National Security Council?
No, they're now saying, the Obama people are now saying that Assad has a key role to play in the transition, as they call it.
Well,
and that transition can last a very, very long time. No, they don't intend to bring down Assad. If you want to bring down a nasty regime in the Middle East, the one to bring down is Iran. There you do have chances. But Assad now is under the protection of this alliance of the Iranians and the Iraqis and the Russians and the Chinese and so forth.
Then why the attachment, Mr. Obama's attachment to Tehran? If he's willing to suffer Assad, what is it that he finds in Tehran that's meritorious? What is it that he's looking to solve, Michael? Russia just showed up as the cop on the beat. There's a marshal standing there, and it speaks Russian. So I'm trying to figure out what it is that Mr. Obama can now achieve in the 480 days left.
Well, exactly. All he can do is empower our worst enemy in the Middle East. Why does he want to do that? I don't know. It's a mystery. I insist it's a mystery. But it's a very long-standing mystery, and it's a failure of our political analysts and our journalists and so forth to get to the bottom of it. But what we know is that he came to office wanting this, and he has pursued it relentlessly ever since. Why? I don't know. I don't like it, but I don't get it.
Is it possible that this speaks, as you say, this is the counter-revolutionary Obama, this is the anti-colonial Obama, this is Obama living in the 20th century, and he will review now that Mr. Putin has shown up on the scene?
Oh, absolutely. He's right out of this horrible school system where he views America as the basic cause of bad things in the world, and these other people, he always has a bit of sympathy for them. He thinks that Iranian, Russian, Chinese criticisms of the United States are, for the most part, justified. So he's not going to take them on.
The Islamic State, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, the jihadists, the Chechens who are joined up with them, they're not going to disappear because Putin says the Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. They're going to fight, Michael. Does Mr. Obama mean to get involved in that fight? Does he mean to put American war-fighting unit into this, or is this jawboning?
I don't know. He doesn't want to. But on the other hand, he doesn't want to have to fight in Afghanistan either. He wants to leave office bragging about having left both Iraq and Afghanistan. But the way things are going in Afghanistan, he's not likely to turn tail and run from there. So will he now engage on the ground? Well, we've got, if you read the blogs carefully, you'll find that we now have special forces and CIA people on the ground in Iraq and Syria, and they're doing things, fighting, although secretly. And it wouldn't surprise me if Putin said, come on, put up or shut up, then he might put up. After all, if the Iranians said, come on, we're all in this together, it's us, come on, he'd probably say, yeah, you're right, come on, let's go.
Michael Ledeen of the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. The world after Obama is a question mark. I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show.